Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a time when being born with two X chromosomes was enough to seal your fate. You're not a knight, you're not a monk, and you're definitely not going on any quests, except maybe the lifelong one to not die during childbirth. This is the Middle Ages, and from the moment you arrive in the world, life is stacked against you. You're not the heir. You're not even the backup heir. You're what the midwife might call another mouth to feed, and what your father might call a future dowry expense. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it over there? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The rush of cold air hits you before your first breath. The thatched ceiling looms overhead, flickering in the light of a guttering candle stub. There's a wooden pail of warm water by the straw-stuffed mattress your mother is groaning on. And the smell, well, you'll get used to the smell. You're born in the winter, which means two things. One, your odds of surviving infancy just took a nosedive. And two, your family is probably huddled in the one warm room with the pigs. Congratulations, you're a girl, which earned some side glances and a few tired sighs. There's no celebration, no feasting. Maybe your mother offers a weary smile if she survived the birth. Maternal mortality, remember? It's less of a statistic and more of a recurring nightmare around here. Your name might be something like Agnes, Matilda, or Joan. Strong names. But even that won't shield you from the invisible weight already pressing down on your tiny shoulders. Because in your world, being born female is more than just a biological fact. It's a built-in disadvantage. You won't inherit land. You won't train for battle. You'll be taught how to spin thread, bake flatbread, and maybe, if someone's feeling generous, read a line of Latin scripture before being told that was enough book learning for one day. Historians still argue whether medieval parents truly loved their daughters the same as sons, or if affection was rationed based on gender, like winter grain. Some scholars suggest daughters were cherished in private, but rarely celebrated in public. Others point to a glaring pattern. Girls were often betrothed before they had full sets of teeth. Your father might be a farmer, a blacksmith, or a laborer. Your mother's role? Everything else. And yours will be much the same. Before you've even taken your first steps, you're being rocked in rough linen and cradled with the knowledge that you'll one day bleed, breed, and probably break under the pressure of it all. You spend your first year swaddled tight to keep you safe from chills, evil spirits, and your own wiggly limbs. Because superstition is medicine when medicine doesn't really exist. Your cradle is likely made of scrap wood, softened only by a folded tunic or a lamb's pelt if you're lucky. The lullabies are gentle but bleak, and you're soothed to sleep not with plush toys, but with a carved spoon, or maybe a pine cone that smells faintly of the forest outside. By your second year, you're already considered capable of helping in small ways, holding thread, handing your mother a needle, or simply being quiet while she works. Childhood is not a protected phase here. It's a prelude to productivity. Every day, you're upright, and breathing is another day to start learning what's expected. By 5, you're probably herding chickens or patching your own hem with clumsy fingers. If you're born into nobility, lucky you. You're not working the fields, but you're being trained for etiquette, embroidery, and the fine art of never speaking out of turn. You might have a wet nurse, a governess, or a tutor if you're extra fortunate, but still, no one's handing you a sword. And no matter where you stand on the social ladder, there's one unifying truth. Your body isn't fully yours. Not now, not later, not ever. It's a vessel, a future contract, a walking billboard for your family's honor. Spill soup on your smock, and someone will tisk about your sloppiness. Laugh too loudly, and they'll say you're bold. Show curiosity? Dangerous. Too much spark, and you'll get labeled something between unladylike and suspicious. But still, for now, you toddle barefoot through muddy courtyards and threadbare hallways, chasing goats and avoiding the chamber pot spills. There's a strange sort of joy here in these brief pre-womanhood years. You catch snowflakes on your tongue in winter. You learn the names of herbs from your mother in spring. You whisper bedtime secrets to your sister under flea-ridden blankets. And once in a while, just once in a while, you forget that you're being trained like a horse for sale. Did you know that in some rural villages, girls were sometimes fed certain foods believed to make them more fertile later in life? Honeyed oats, warm milk, even herbal brews that were part folk remedy, part future investment. You're not just a child. You're an orchard someone else is planning to harvest. And while you play with a straw doll in the corner, your parents are already whispering about who might one day take you off their hands. You're 6 now, maybe 7, and your world smells like boiled cabbage, wood smoke, and wet wool. The floor beneath your bare feet is always cold, stone, dirt, or uneven planks, depending on where you've landed in the grand medieval lottery. And the chill finds its way up through your bones like it has a grudge. There are no slippers, no fluffy socks. If your family can afford shoes at all, you get 1 pair per year, and only for when guests come or it's so cold the chickens freeze standing up. You rise with the sun, or before it, if you're lucky enough to have a rooster with any sense of punctuality. No snooze buttons here. Your bed is a hay-filled sack shared with siblings, fleas, and that one mouse you pretend not to see. Sleep isn't something you fall into. It's something you collapse into after a day that feels like 2 packed into 1. By now, you have chores, not pretend chores, not tidy your toys or set the table. Real chores, like hauling water from the well, which is a 1/4 mile away and somehow uphill in both directions. The bucket is heavy and sloshes onto your skirt, which freezes stiff in winter. If you spill it, start over. Your hands are red and cracked from scrubbing linens in icy water. Your nails are always dirty, not from rebellion, but because soap is a luxury and baths are events, not routines. You're expected to help with younger siblings, feed the goats, shell peas, patch socks, and keep your mouth shut unless you're spoken to. Meanwhile, the boys, your brothers, cousins, or neighbors, run around with sticks pretending they're swords. They're filthy too, but no one seems to mind. Boys will be boys after all. You? You need to keep clean, modest, and composed, whatever that means when you've just been elbow deep in chicken feed. Historians still debate how much playtime girls actually got. Some suggest girls had brief windows for games and laughter, while others believe most girls were pushed into domestic duty so early that any real play was squeezed out like the last scrap of marrow from a soup bone. Whatever the case, you learn early that freedom is rationed, and usually in someone else's favor. Let's talk fashion, or what passes for it. Your dress is hand-me-down hemp or coarse wool, dyed in drab browns or grays unless someone splurged on onion skin yellow or faded madder red. It's itchy, always itchy. It clings in the wrong places when you sweat and offers no warmth where it counts. You might wear an apron, if your family can spare the cloth, or a shawl that smells like goat. Your hair is braided back to keep it out of your eyes, and the soup pot. You don't get ribbons. You get practicality. Your body's still childlike, but people are watching it as if it's on the cusp of something dangerous. A neighbor mentions how tall you're getting. Your mother eyes your chest warily when it starts to hint at curves. You don't understand it yet, but there's an invisible countdown hovering in the air, ticking toward your usefulness. Meals are predictable. Barley porridge, hard bread, dried beans, maybe cheese if you're lucky, and someone didn't already sneak it. You're taught to eat last, to leave the best for the men, to serve without comment. Your stomach growls sometimes while you're dishing out stew, and you learn to silence it with a swallow and a smile. And the church? It looms in the background of your life like a shadow you can't quite shake. You're told you were born sinful and must be pure. You recite prayers you barely understand and curtsy before priests who look at you with unreadable eyes. Sometimes you sneak a glance at the painted faces of saints in the stained glass windows and wonder if any of them ever had to wash woolen diapers in the rain. Oh, and here's a fun fringe fact. In some households, girls were given small wooden or clay tokens as early virtue reminders, miniature symbols of chastity or obedience they were expected to carry, like good luck charms. Drop one or lose it. Your mother might read it as a bad omen, or worse, an omen that you were bad. You sleep with the smell of onions on your fingers and smoke in your hair. Your pillow, if you have one, is stuffed with straw and lumpy as a sack of turnips. The fire flickers low in the hearth, and you listen to the sounds of mice scrabbling in the corners and your father snoring on the other side of the room. Some nights, your mother hums to herself as she spins wool by candlelight, her fingers flying even when her eyes droop with fatigue. You watch her from under your threadbare blanket, half in awe, half in dread, because you know, eventually, this will be your fate too. The endless rhythm of spinning, washing, mending, cooking, bearing, enduring, and yet, there's a strange strength in this too. You learn to find joy in the warmth of fresh bread, the rustle of poplar trees, the whispered jokes traded with a friend while scrubbing pots. You make faces at the cat, and she blinks slowly back like she gets it. You steal moments of childhood like stolen honey, quick, sticky, and too sweet to last. Your arms ache. Your dress is damp. The wind howls outside the shutters. But you lie back, close your eyes, and dream of nothing more daring than a warm fire, a softer bed, and maybe, just maybe, a day without chores. Your ninth winter hits harder than the ones before. The air slices through your clothes like a knife made of ice, and your breath fogs up in the mornings, thick as soup. Inside the home, if it can be called that, your fingers stay numb from dawn to dusk. The hearth never quite warms the room, no matter how much wood is burned or how tightly the shutters are nailed shut. You've learned to dress in layers, but wool soaks up moisture and holds it like a grudge. You now understand that survival depends on repetition. Every day brings the same rituals, the same chores, the same caution. And a new lesson arrives. Silence. You've started to notice how women in your village speak with half their voices, eyes lowered, words smoothed over like river stones. Loudness is not welcome. Assertiveness? Dangerous. Girls who ask too many questions get labeled wild, ungodly, not right. Historians still argue whether medieval women were truly voiceless or simply spoke in spaces that history forgot to record. Some believe women wielded soft power in kitchens, behind closed doors, within whispered networks. Others claim that most girls simply learned early that safety came through obedience, not opinion. You? You figured out that the fewer waves you make, the less likely you are to get caught in a storm. You're starting to understand your place in the hierarchy, and it's low, like bottom rung of a shaky wooden ladder in the middle of a swamp. Low. Men eat first. Men speak first. Men walk ahead. Your job is to follow, serve, and thank them for the privilege. If you're lucky, maybe someone praises how well-behaved you are, which is code for quiet and invisible. Puberty doesn't wait for permission. Your body begins to change, awkwardly and without warning. You don't get a heads up, or a pamphlet, or even a chat from your mother. Instead, it arrives suddenly, like a rude guest. Your first period. There's shock, then shame, then whispered instructions about rags and cleanliness. You're told to be careful, not why, just be careful. And here's a fun little historical tidbit. Some medieval women believed menstruation could attract evil spirits or make crops fail. One French herbal manual from the 14th century even warned that a menstruating woman should not bake bread, lest the dough rot in the oven. You don't know that, of course, but you do notice people treating you differently now, watching more closely, speaking more softly. Your chores change subtly. You're expected to help your mother more, to stop climbing trees, not that you had much time for that anyway. Your role shifts quietly, like a chair being nudged across a room. No one tells you outright, but the message is clear. Childhood is behind you now. And what lies ahead? Well, that's the part no one will explain. There are girls your age who already wear betrothal ribbons. That means their fathers have promised them to local boys, usually in exchange for land, goods, or alliances. A goat here, a pig there, maybe half a barrel of cider. You're not shocked. You've seen it happen to girls even younger than you. Marriage isn't about love. It's about property. And, fun fact, you are property. At night, you listen to the women talk when they think you're asleep. They whisper about pregnancies, miscarriages, beatings. You pretend to doze while the fire crackles. One speaks of a neighbor girl sent away for bearing a child without a husband. The others nod grimly. You don't ask questions, not anymore. You just lie still and absorb it, like dry bread in weak broth. The church plays a growing role in this new phase of your life. You're expected to attend more regularly, to confess sins you don't understand, to mimic the piety of women 3 times your age. A priest once gave a sermon about Eve and how all women bear her sin. You try not to let that bother you, but it lingers, heavy and itchy like a wool shawl in summer. And still, you find moments of rebellion. You mouth the Latin hymns wrong on purpose. You giggle with a friend when the baker's boy trips over a turnip. You steal an apple when no one's looking and eat it slowly in the hayloft, savoring the freedom. These moments aren't grand, but they're yours. They remind you that somewhere inside this grinding machinery of expectations, you still exist. There's a traveling woman in the village sometimes, an herbalist with crooked teeth and a knowing smile. She wears strange colors, speaks too confidently, and claims to know how to stop a baby before it starts. Your mother won't let you speak to her. Witch, she mutters. But once, you catch the woman's eye as she passes, and she winks. For a moment, you wonder what it would be like to be her, to walk freely, unwed, unowned. That night, you dream of wearing blue, a color no one in your family can afford. A rich, deep blue, like a summer sky at dusk. You twirl in it, arms open wide, before waking up to the cold slap of reality. Gray wool, cracked hands, and a world that wants you quiet. Still, something has shifted in you. Just a little. You carry yourself taller. Ask one more question than you did last week. You start to notice the lies tucked beneath, "That's just how it is." Maybe you don't know how to change things, but now you know they can be changed. And knowledge, even in small spoonfuls, tastes sweeter than anything in the pantry. You wake to the rhythm of bells, church bells, not clocks. Time here isn't measured in hours but in prayers. Matins, lauds, prime. You've started to associate chores with chimes. When the second bell rings, you know it's time to fetch water from the stream. Not from the well. No, that's only for drinking. The stream is where you clean linens and scrub your skin raw in the bitter cold. You're strong now. Not the kind of strong people write poems about. No shining armor or dragon slaying here. You're the kind of strong that carries 3 pails of water at once, balancing them on aching hips. You dig potatoes with hands numb from frost. You haul firewood, spin flax, and scrub clothes until your knuckles crack open like overripe plums. You don't think of this as labor. It's just life. But let's talk about your most important job now, preparing for marriage. You're 13, maybe 14. The local midwife made a comment about your hips last week. "They're ripening," she said, "like you're a piece of fruit." Your mother didn't correct her. She just nodded, eyes tired and resigned. Marriage isn't something you choose. It's arranged, discussed behind doors you're not invited through. Your father is talking to someone. Your future husband's family, most likely. You caught the name once. Thomas. He's older than you. 17? 20? You've seen him around the village. He smells like horses and sour ale. Once, he winked at you with yellowing teeth. You wish the earth would open up and swallow you whole. And here's the real kicker. You don't get to say no. Not unless you want to be labeled disobedient, or worse, cursed. In some parts of medieval Europe, refusing a match could bring accusations of being bewitched, unnatural, or possessed. There's even one dusty manuscript that suggests a girl's refusal to marry was a sign she had no womb fire, which sounds poetic until you realize it means not useful for making babies. You try not to think about the wedding night. You don't even know what it really means. There are hints, warnings, innuendos. A girl you knew came back from her first night sobbing so hard she couldn't speak for a week. Another disappeared completely. Taken to her husband's family land, they said, too quickly. Historians still argue how much agency medieval girls truly had in these unions. Some suggest women could delay or influence arrangements. Others say any signs of choice were rare exceptions, not rules. From where you stand, wrapped in wool and uncertainty, it doesn't much matter. The wheel is already turning. Your trousseau is being assembled. Linens you helped embroider. A modest wooden chest. Maybe a necklace if your mother can part with it. You're taught to make stew without burning it. How to mix herbs for fevers. And how to keep quiet even when your bones ache. Your dowry isn't gold. It's domestic competence. And then comes the bath. It's not a regular bath. not the kind you take once a month, heated by stones dropped into a bucket. This one is ceremonial. You're scrubbed down with lye soap and vinegar. Your hair is combed and braided tightly. Your nails are clipped and filed. Every trace of childhood, every scab, every tangle, every wild inch of you is smoothed into something someone else will want. You sit still while your mother weaves a flower crown for your head, daisies and wild rosemary. She says rosemary keeps away bad spirits, though it can't do much about bad husbands. The night before your wedding, you don't sleep. You lie on your straw mattress, fingers twitching, heart in your throat. Outside, a dog barks. Inside, the house is too quiet. You hear your parents whispering. Soft, strained syllables you can't quite catch. You know what they're saying. You're not a child anymore. This is the last night you'll sleep under their roof. The next morning, you're dressed before dawn. White, of course. Not the kind of white you'd see in modern bridal shops. More like whitish, an undyed wool that still smells faintly of sheep. Your feet are cold. Your hands are clammy. Your future is shaped like a man who once spat into the dirt right in front of you. The village gathers. There's bread, ale, maybe a fiddler if someone's lucky. People laugh, cheer, slap your father on the back. Thomas grins like a man who's just acquired a new ox. You smile because you're supposed to, because smiling means you're grateful, and being grateful keeps you safe. The priest reads vows in Latin. You say them back, not because you understand them, but because not saying them would cause a scene. You're handed over like livestock, with a kiss and a blessing. Just like that, your name changes, your status changes, your home changes, but you still feel like the same girl who once stole apples and climbed trees. As the feast begins, you catch sight of your mother watching from a distance. She doesn't smile. She just nods, once. There's something in her eyes. Pride, sorrow, maybe even apology. You'll remember that look for years. And later, when the candles burn low and the guests start to slur their songs, you're led away. Your stomach churns. The bed is too big, too quiet, too final. Thomas fumbles with his belt. You pretend your mind is somewhere else. A blue dress, a wink from a traveling woman, the taste of stolen fruit. You close your eyes and try to float. Morning light creeps through the cracks in the shutters, painting slivers across your face as you lie there, unmoving. The sheets beneath you are wrinkled and damp with sweat. Some of it yours, most of it not. You didn't cry. That's something, you suppose. You wanted to, but something inside you folded instead, like the brittle edge of a parchment left too long by the fire. Thomas snores beside you, mouth open, one hairy leg thrown across the bed. You don't look at him. Instead, you fixate on a spiderweb in the corner of the ceiling. It trembles slightly, as though the spiders just finished building it in the night. There's something oddly comforting about its fragile precision. You get up quietly. Your limbs feel hollow, like you've been scooped out. There's no water for washing, and no one will bring it. That job falls to you now. You dress in yesterday's undergown, careful not to wake him. The floor is cold, the wooden planks uneven beneath your toes. In the next room, your new kitchen, you build the fire, start the porridge, and begin your day as a wife. No celebration follows. No honeymoon. In fact, no one really checks in on you at all. Medieval marriage isn't about romance or companionship. It's a legal contract and a breeding expectation. You're now the lady of your husband's house, regardless of how small or grimy that house might be, and your worth is calculated in how well you can keep it from falling apart. Your daily life is a blur of tasks. You churn butter until your arms ache, knead bread with flour you sifted yourself, boil clothes in lye water that leaves your hands raw and red. There's no luxury, no pause, no reward, just survival. But let's talk about sex. Or rather, let's talk about the strange rules surrounding it. You were told vaguely that it was your duty, your marital debt. Church doctrine said you couldn't refuse your husband, even if you were ill, pregnant, or weeping. Some priests, in their more enlightened moments, admitted that husbands should be kind and not too insistent. But these were soft suggestions, not binding law. Historians still argue whether medieval women had more sexual autonomy than we assume, especially within peasant communities where priests didn't often interfere. But in your world, autonomy is more of an idea than a lived experience. What matters is obedience, silence, and producing heirs. You learn quickly how to shrink into yourself. You develop the art of distraction, faking sleep, complaining of headaches, pretending the baby needs you just as your husband climbs into bed. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes he's drunk, and his breath smells like soured beer, and you just go somewhere else in your head. The same place you went on that first night. There are no contraceptives in the way you might know them. Not reliable ones, anyway. The village herbalist whispers about pennyroyal tea and tansy oil, but those remedies are risky. One girl bled for 3 days after trying it. Another swore by crocodile dung packed in linen and inserted, you know where. It's weird and probably painful, but desperate girls will try anything. You do get pregnant, of course. The first time is a mix of terror and awe. Your breasts ache. Your belly tightens. You can feel a flutter beneath your ribs, like wings trapped in a jar. People congratulate you, but it's a congratulations dipped in expectation. Now you must prove yourself. Now the real work begins. You're barely 15. Pregnancy is dangerous. You know that from whispered stories and sad glances. 1 in every 3 women in your village dies from childbirth complications. You've seen the midwife carry out the body of a girl who bled too much, whose baby never cried. There are no hospitals, no epidurals, no emergency cesareans. You give birth on a pallet of straw, surrounded by women clutching rosaries and boiling water. The pain is indescribable, so intense it blots out everything. You scream. You bite down on leather. You curse your husband, your mother, the saints. You think you might die. You honestly want to. Then a cry. It's a girl. Your first thought isn't joy. It's dread. You know what the world will do to her, what it expects of her. Your husband is disappointed. He tries to hide it but fails. He wanted a boy, someone to work the land. A girl? Just another mouth to feed until she can make herself useful. You breastfeed, you swaddle, you soothe her tears while yours stay hidden. You get no rest? Not really. No maternity leave here? By the 3rd day, you're kneading dough again, baby strapped to your chest, bleeding still. Your body feels alien, your mind like cotton. You try to find joy in small things. Your baby's grip around your thumb. The way her eyes blink sleepily at the morning sun. The faint smell of rosemary you keep tucked in your sleeve. Sometimes Thomas is kind. He brings you a flower, helps with the firewood. These moments are brief, but you cling to them like a thread in a storm. There's a woman in the village, a widow, who teaches you how to read small bits of scripture. She tells you stories about women who spoke with angels, led armies, defied kings. You ask if those women were real. She says, "They're as real as we let them be." That sticks with you. Your world is small, but your mind wanders. You begin to notice more: the stars on cold nights, the intricate patterns in your embroidery, the way bread rises if you sing to it softly. You whisper stories to your daughter, made up ones, where the girl always wins. Because even here, even now, you are something fierce. You learn to move through the days like a ghost with a to-do list. Churn, wash, feed, mend, repeat. Your hands are never idle, raw from lye, nicked from blades, scorched from fire. But it's your mind that drifts, even as your body labors. You catch yourself humming songs you don't remember learning. Sometimes you recite the alphabet beneath your breath, like a secret spell. Your daughter grows, little by little. You measure her not in inches, but in milestones. First tooth, first steps, first scraped knee. She laughs easily. You don't, not anymore. But you smile when she does. You catch yourself whispering prayers, not to saints, but to time. Just give her a better life. You ask silently. Just let her reach womanhood with her heart still whole. One morning, while fetching water, you hear a scream. You rush to the square, and there she is. Marjorie, a girl barely 17, held by two guards as the priest berates her in front of the villagers. Her hair is wild, her dress torn. Fornication, they say. Lust. She's pregnant and unwed. The crowd watches in silence. Some shake their heads, others mutter curses. The punishment is public penance, a white shift, barefoot walk, prayers screamed through a mouth that just sobbed for mercy. You hold your daughter tighter. She doesn't understand what's happening. You hope she never will. Later that evening, the whispers start. Marjorie's baby is stillborn. No one knows what happened. Or maybe they do, and no one will say. There are stories. Stories of women who drink parsley water laced with mercury, of midwives who accidentally cut the cord too soon, of shame so sharp it carves lives out of existence. Historians still argue whether women in your position truly internalize the shame or simply learn to wear it like armor. Either way, the result is the same. You carry on, hunched not just from work, but from the weight of being watched, judged, blamed. Time passes, and your husband grows more bitter. He drinks more now. The fields were poor last harvest, and there's no one to blame but you, apparently. You didn't pray hard enough. You didn't light the right candles. You let a fox steal the hens. You misplaced his tools. You breathed wrong. The beatings don't start as beatings. They start as shouts, then thrown cups, then slammed doors. Then, one day, a slap so sharp it makes your ears ring. You don't cry. You're too surprised. He says you were asking for it, that you made him do it, that he's sorry, but only after you stop looking at him. You lied to your daughter when she asks about the bruise. I tripped on the root by the well, you say. She nods, then hugs you without a word. You wonder if she knows the truth already. You hope not. But children see more than we ever want them to. There are no shelters, no laws to protect you. The church might intervene if the bruises are too visible, but even then it's a risk. The priest might counsel forgiveness, might remind you that a disobedient wife invites the devil, might insist that a woman's silence is her virtue. You decide not to tell anyone. You're not sure what would be worse, being ignored or being noticed. On the worst nights, you lie awake with your daughter curled beside you, her tiny breaths soft against your arm. You stare at the ceiling and imagine running away. Where would you go? The woods? The convent? A widow's cottage 2 villages over? You don't know. But the idea flickers in your mind like candlelight. Escape. That word feels foreign, heavy, dangerous. Still, you tuck away coins, just a few, hidden in the hem of your shift. Enough for bread and a bed of straw. Maybe one ride in a passing cart. It isn't much, but it's something. A secret stash, a silent scream of agency in a world that offers none. Your neighbor, Elise, the baker's wife, brings you honeyed bread one morning. Her eyes are kind. She doesn't ask questions. She just says, "You're not alone, you know." That simple sentence breaks something in you, and for the first time in weeks, you let yourself cry. You cry quickly, quietly, because there's still water to fetch, and the goat needs milking, and your husband is due back before dusk. You learn to lean on women like Elise. There's a quiet sisterhood among you, bound not by blood, but by endurance. You trade recipes and secrets. You share warnings. Don't use the south well. The rope's frayed. Or tell your girl not to walk past the mill after dark. You lend each other combs, herbs, gossip, comfort. It's not much, but it's survival. One night, during a gathering for St. Bridget's Eve, you listen to the older women tell stories around the fire. They talk of goddesses and saints, of women who healed with touch, who spoke to rivers, who foretold storms. You wonder if they're speaking in code. You wonder if you could be like that. Quiet power wrapped in homespun. You glance at your daughter, asleep in your lap, her cheeks pink from the firelight. Maybe, just maybe, there's a future for her beyond all this. Maybe, just maybe, you're not as powerless as they want you to believe. The seasons shift again. Spring thaws the frostbitten soil, coaxing weeds and wildflowers from the ground like secret messages. You rise before dawn most days, the world still wrapped in a soft fog, and begin the slow churn of chores. Your body aches in familiar places now, shoulders, wrists, lower back. They've become the weather vanes of your life, signaling change not in clouds, but in stiffness and strain. This spring brings news. The Lord Steward arrives one morning, his cloak damp with dew and his boots caked in mud. He stands at the edge of your yard, his voice flat. The tax has increased. Just like that. No explanation, no apology. He scribbles something on a roll of parchment, then leaves you with a number that makes your stomach twist. You're a villain, a peasant tied to the land, not quite a slave, but certainly not free. You owe labor and grain, eggs and wool, sometimes even chickens. The steward doesn't care that the rains washed out half your barley. The tithe still stands, he says. You spend the next week calculating how much you can hide. How many eggs won't be missed? Can you bury a jar of butter beneath the floorboards? Elise whispers that she's been feeding her goat less so it produces less milk, hoping the steward won't notice. You nod. You're all playing the same game. Survive, deceive, repeat. Still, it's not just the taxes. The church knocks next. A friar with robes too clean and a voice too sweet reminds you it's time for the annual tithe to God, 1/10 of everything, even your hens. Render unto Caesar, he says, smiling as if he's made a joke. You don't laugh. Instead, you watch him take a basket of your best carrots and walk off, whistling. Historians still debate how deeply women like you resented the church. Some say you found comfort in the rituals, in the chants, and the incense, and the carved saints. Others argue that you saw through it, that you noticed the priest's robe was always new, even when your baby had no shoes. It's during this time that your daughter begins asking questions. Why do we give so much away? Why does the steward never smile? Why does father yell more when the sky turns gray. You give her answers that feel like lies, because that's the way it is, because we must, because sometimes grown-ups get tired. But inside, you're spinning with the same questions. You wonder if anyone is ever really satisfied, or if life is just a long series of owed debts and swallowed pride. One afternoon, while turning soil, you hear bells in the distance. A procession is coming, pilgrims passing through the village on their way to a holy shrine. You wipe your hands on your apron and walk to the road with the others. Dust swirls around the travelers like a veil. They carry wooden staffs and wear patched cloaks, and many have strange accents. You spot a woman with a red veil and henned hands. She smiles at you. The children gather near, eyes wide at the novelty of strangers. Some pilgrims hand out scraps of food or charms, tiny crosses carved from bone, herbs tied with string. One man plays a flute, the tune so strange and lovely it gives you goosebumps. For a brief moment, the village feels like part of a larger world. You're not just a peasant, a wife, a mother. You're a witness to something else. Movement, possibility, the distant shimmer of elsewhere. That night, your daughter dreams of riding with the pilgrims. "Maybe we could go one day," she whispers. You nod, though you know the truth. You are tethered, bound to the land like a tree, rooted, immobile, but still reaching toward the sun. You try to feed her curiosity. Elise lends you a book, or rather, a book's torn cover and 2 battered pages. It's in Latin, so you can't read it, but the drawings fascinate your daughter. Dragons, saints, ships. You spin stories to go with them. At night, you make up tales about women who slay beasts or fly on wind currents, anything to stretch her imagination beyond the village walls. Of course, not everyone approves. A neighbor sees your daughter scribbling shapes in the dirt and mutters, "Teach her to weave, not to dream." You smile politely, but later you draw letters in the ash by the hearth and whisper, "This one's an A." Your daughter repeats it, giggling. Her giggle sounds like rebellion. That week, the steward's man catches a boy stealing apples. He's maybe 12. The punishment is swift. Stocks in the square, 3 days, no food. The boy's mother sobs in silence. You leave a crust of bread near the post after dark. Quietly, carefully. You never say a word. Later that month, rumors swirl. Talk of bandits in the woods. A woman with a silver blade. A tax cart that vanished. The stories come and go like smoke. But they stir something in you. Not hope exactly. Something older. A flicker? A whisper. Maybe survival isn't just about endurance. Maybe it's also about small defiance. The next time the steward's man knocks, you give him a basket, but not your best. You keep the ripest pears tucked under the bed in a sack stitched shut with red thread. It feels like theft. It feels like freedom. You tell your daughter a bedtime story about a clever girl who tricks a king into giving her a cow. She wore a cloak made of ivy and never told a lie, but always told the truth sideways. Your daughter asks, "Was she real?" You pause. The air is thick with summer. Heat settles on your shoulders like an old cat. Heavy, clingy, unwilling to move. You wake each morning already sweating. The linen of your shift damp and scratchy before you've even put on your apron. The cottage smells of dust and livestock and cooking fat, and you're constantly waving flies away from your face, like some reluctant queen, dismissing invisible courtiers. This is when the work multiplies. Fields demand attention from sunup to sundown. Hay must be cut, dried, and stacked. Chickens escape their pen. Goats chew on your laundry, And somewhere in the middle of it all, your youngest comes down with a fever. You press a hand to her forehead, hotter than the bread oven. She coughs until her voice is hoarse, then curls up like a cat and sleeps for hours. You watch her, worried, trying to remember what the herbalist said about willow bark and yarrow. Your neighbor offers a tincture made from frog lungs and nettle. Old recipe, she says with a shrug. You use it anyway. The child recovers. Or maybe she would have anyway. No one really knows. Healing in your world is half wisdom, half guesswork, and one part whispered hope. Historians still argue whether women in your position had consistent access to medical knowledge. Some claim village women maintained vast herbal traditions passed down for generations. Others argue much was lost, stolen, or labeled witchcraft when men took over medicine in the later centuries. You, for now, rely on instinct, stories, and whatever grows in the hedgerow. And your body? It's wearing down. Your hands crack from constant scrubbing. Knees ache. A sharp, annoying pain shoots through your hip when you lift too quickly. You once tried stretching like the monks supposedly do, laying on your back in the yard and lifting your legs. But your daughter laughed so hard she nearly choked on her berry porridge. Still, the pain doesn't stop you. You can't let it. There are no sick days here, no one else to take up the slack. Even when you bleed more heavily than usual one month and faint while grinding barley, you rest only long enough to drink water and eat salted lard on toast before pushing yourself up again. It's that, or let everything fall apart. This summer, there's talk of a marriage match. Not for you, of course. For your daughter. She's just reached the age where village men glance her way, then look quickly away, pretending they were checking the clouds. One of the baker's sons has been mentioned, Timotheus. Hair like broom bristles, and ears that stick out like door handles. But his family has goats. Goats mean milk. Milk means cheese. Cheese means a little more safety than you have now. You're not thrilled, but you remember your own wedding. You remember the cold feet, literally, not metaphorically, standing barefoot in the chapel while the priest droned and the man beside you adjusted his belt. There were no romantic declarations, no flower garlands, just a dowry of chickens and a jug of cider and the weight of expectation. You want more for her, or less maybe, less pressure, less of this life. So you stall. You tell the baker's wife that your daughter is needed at home for now. You mention a cousin who might be interested in Timotheus instead. You start letting your daughter spend more time with Elise, learning how to prepare salves and identify plants. Maybe she'll become a healer. Maybe she'll travel. Or maybe she'll just have a little more say in what her life becomes. One morning, while harvesting, you catch sight of a procession near the manor. A lady is being carried in a litter, silk drapes fluttering, her hands folded delicately like origami birds. She doesn't look at you, just stares straight ahead with a blank expression, as if you and the wheat and the world beneath her don't exist. But you notice something. She's young, younger than your daughter, and she's already dressed like a widow, all pale fabrics and distant eyes. Later you learn the lady was married off to a man 3 times her age, a land merger, not a romance. Her eyes weren't blank, they were resigned. It sits with you for days, that look. Meanwhile, the gossip returns. Someone in the next village has given birth to twins, by candlelight, in the barn, with no help but an old midwife who'd drunk half a bottle of mead. She bit through the cord herself, one woman says, wide-eyed. like a dog. You laugh, but it's the nervous kind, because the stories might be exaggerated, sure, but not by much. You've seen women crawl back from childbirth like survivors of a battle no one witnessed, bleeding, broken, but still expected to get up and bake bread by week's end. You're lucky to have survived your own, and luckier still that you only had two. Many women don't get to stop, child after child after child, each one a risk, each one another mouth to feed, a roll of the dice where the house always wins. One night, your daughter asks you what it feels like to give birth. You pause. You think of storms and tearing fabric. You think of silence and screaming, and that moment just after when the world feels strangely, impossibly still. Then you answer simply, "It hurts, but it's worth it." She nods, but doesn't smile. And for the first time, you realize she isn't a child anymore. Summer begins to fold into autumn. The days shorten, the nights cool, the harvest comes in, and the entire village breathes in relief, just for a moment. Then you get back to work, because there's always more to do. The first frost comes suddenly, catching the last of the beans on the vine. You wake to a cold that has crept inside the cottage like a sly animal, curling itself around your ankles and breathing on your fingertips. You wrap yourself in layers, linen, wool, whatever isn't damp from yesterday's washing, and move stiffly through your chores. Autumn in the medieval countryside is a season of racing time. You hurry to preserve what you've harvested. Apples are sliced and dried, cabbage salted down into sour-smelling barrels. Herbs are strung from the rafters like little green bats, drying into brittle flakes that might save a throat or stomach come February. And yet, even in all this rush, a strange kind of beauty surfaces. The trees glow with color, rare as gold. The air smells of wood smoke and wet soil. Your daughter walks with you through the woods, gathering mushrooms. You test each one against your memory. The flat one with gills? No. The bulbous one with spots? Definitely not. But the brown ones near the birch? Maybe. You chew the edge and wait. Still alive after a minute? Into the basket they go. Still, things are getting lean. The hens have slowed their laying. You trade a dozen turnips for 3 eggs and still feel cheated. Your joints hurt more in the cold, and firewood is already scarce. You save the best logs for night, burning damp twigs during the day, and hoping the smoke doesn't choke you. That's when the taxes come. The steward arrives on a horse that probably eats better than you do. He's dressed in stiff wool with a feather in his hat, and he reads the account scroll with a pinched, nasal voice that makes your molars itch. This year's tally: grain, of course, a sack of dried peas, a goat hide, and your best cooking pot. You argue, briefly. He shrugs. "It's the Lord's due," he says, as if that settles it. Then he rides off, leaving hoof prints like insults in the muddy lane. Historians still argue whether peasant women were directly responsible for the taxes, or if the burden technically fell to the head of household. But in practice, you know the truth. If the pot's gone, you're the one who has to cook in a cracked cauldron now. If the grain's short, you're the one stretching bread with acorn flour. It's not just food that's harder to come by. Warmth, too, becomes a game of cleverness. You sew patches into every garment, stuff straw between wall planks, and sleep two to a bed, sharing breath and body heat. Your feet stay cold anyway. You try wrapping them in cloth, dipped in mutton fat, like your grandmother once did. It helps a little. Smells like stew. You hear rumors, traveling down from the manor, drifting like smoke through the village. The lady of the house, Yes, the same one you saw in silk, is ill. Some say it's melancholy. Others whisper miscarriage. Either way, she hasn't been seen in weeks. One maid claims the priest was called for last rites. Another says she fled in the night. You wonder what truth hides in it, and whether that truth matters to someone like you. Meanwhile, a neighbor's boy is caught stealing turnips from the manor garden. His punishment is swift: beaten, then shackled for a day in the village square. You see him slumped there, face bruised, staring at nothing. His mother cries into her apron, standing a few feet away. She's not allowed to comfort him. Your daughter watches, her jaw clenched. They'd never do that to one of their own, she mutters. You don't argue. She's right. That night, you talk quietly about leaving. It's not the first time the idea has surfaced, but this time, it feels heavier, more real. You know families who've tried, wandering toward the city, hoping for work in a guild or passage to a convent. Most return, some don't. No one speaks of what happens to those who vanish entirely. Still, you think of it. The distant abbey where women learn to write. The market town where your cousin swears a brewer's wife earns coin enough to wear dyed wool. You imagine the smell of yeast, the hiss of steam, the quiet of a room where no one expects anything of you for 5 full minutes. But you also think of the roads, of thieves and wolves and worse, men who smile too wide, who spot unaccompanied women like hawks see rabbits. The risk is steep. The cost of dreaming, higher than usual this winter. Instead, you prepare. You barter for more salt. Stitch secret pockets into your daughter's gown. Tuck away a bit of dried meat in a jar marked buttons, just in case. You've learned that survival is often about being ready for things that may never come. One morning, a peddler arrives. He smells of horses and wood tar and has stories dripping from his tongue like honey. He speaks of northern towns, of far-off kingdoms where queens rule and women ride horses like men. Your daughter listens with wide eyes. You pretend not to, but your fingers still while spinning flax. The peddler sells you a bit of rosemary oil. Expensive, yes, but it reminds you of summer, of clean mornings and meat that doesn't spoil. He also leaves behind a message. A friend in the next village is forming a caravan come spring. Headed east. Space for a few more. You hide the note beneath the floorboards. Winter deepens. You count every carrot, every candle stub. You mend until your fingers bleed, then wrap them and keep going. There's no time to stop. Your daughter begins to keep a tally in the dirt beside the hearth. 1 mark per day survived. By January, there's a whole grove of little lines. Some nights, you wake to the sound of owls or distant howling. Other times, it's silence that startles you. The kind of silence that feels like it's waiting for something. You lie there, listening to your daughter breathe beside you, and wonder, is this the worst it gets? And if it isn't, will you survive what comes next? Winter's grip tightens. The sun's rays stretch thin and pale across the village, barely warming the frost-hardened earth. You trudge outside each morning, boots crunching on ice that's more brittle than forgiving. The well has frozen again, and the bucket's chain groans in protest as you heave it up. Water is thicker this time of year, not just in the well, but in your bones. Inside the cottage, the fire is a stubborn beast, refusing to roar and instead settling into a tired glow. You toss on another log, the smoke curling upward like a lazy snake, filling the room with the familiar, smoky smell of survival. Your daughter huddles near it, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of thin broth. The days are short, the nights long and cruel. Your work doubles. Food needs to be rationed, clothes mended, the fire fed. You scrape the last bits of marrow from bones to flavor stews. You knit gloves and stockings from scraps of wool, patching holes in your daughter's clothes with bits of thread pulled from old sacks. Even the smallest puncture feels like an invitation to cold. Outside, the village seems hushed under a blanket of snow, but life doesn't stop. The same old arguments ripple through the air. Who borrowed whose axe? Who's letting their pigs roam into the neighbor's field? Who's been caught spreading rumors again? Your ears have grown attuned to the subtext, the weight of power, the whispers of control that bind you tighter than any chain. The church bell tolls for midnight prayers, and you remember the last time you dared to sleep through it. Your mother's voice echoes. A woman's place is to keep watch. You imagine her standing by a flickering candle, stitching with one hand and cradling a babe with the other. She survives storms and famines and men's cruelties. You hope you'll be as strong. Some nights, you dream of freedom, not the kind spoken of in ballads. No horses, no distant castles, no fairy tale escapes. Just a small room, clean and warm, where you can breathe without the weight of judgment. A place where your hands aren't cracked, your back isn't bent, and your voice is yours alone. But dawn brings reality. The manor lord's steward demands the final grain tax. This time, it's heavier than before. For the king's wars, they say, as if the battles fought in distant lands should matter more than your daughter's hunger. You swallow your anger and hand over the last sack, knowing it might mean less bread on your table. You remember hearing about the great wives of the nobility, women who wield power behind closed doors, whose words shaped kingdoms. Some even fought in battles disguised as men. Historians still argue whether these tales were true or the stuff of legend, but you clutch onto the idea because it's a whisper of what might have been. Meanwhile, rumors swirl of a harsh new law, a crackdown on witches and heretics. Women who heal with herbs, who know the old ways, are suddenly dangerous. You think of Elise, your friend and fellow gatherer of remedies. She's been quieter lately, eyes darting when the local priest passes by. You wonder if you, too, are on a list. You certainly know enough about plants and poultices to raise suspicion. But survival means keeping your mouth shut and your remedies hidden. One bitter evening, a stranger arrives at the village edge. A woman, wrapped in dark cloaks, her eyes sharp and tired. She moves like a shadow, speaking little but listening much. Some say she's a healer on the run. Others whisper she might be something else. You watch from the kitchen window as she approaches Elise's door. They talk quietly, the words carried off by the wind. You catch fragments. Safe passage, hidden herbs, spring caravan. Spring. The word tastes like hope. You fold the stolen note from the peddler again and again, tracing the lines with your fingertips. The caravan, the distant abbey, the city market, all distant promises for now, but real enough to kindle a spark in your daughter's eyes. For the first time in months, she smiles. You can't decide whether to be proud or scared. The cold bites sharper each day. Your hands are raw, your face wind-burned, but you're still standing, still breathing. And somewhere, beneath the snow and silence, a future waits. The thaw comes slowly, like a cautious visitor unsure if it's welcome. One morning, the snow has retreated to soggy patches along the paths, and the air tastes faintly of moss and wet earth. You pull on boots, slick with mud, and step outside, the village alive again with the tentative stirrings of spring. It's time. The caravan is gathering on the edge of town, wagons creaking under loads of goods, horses stamping impatiently. The peddler's note tucked safely in your pocket feels like a secret treasure, heavy with possibility. You and your daughter share a glance that says more than words could. Packing for a journey is a different kind of preparation. You wrap herbs and dried meat carefully, stuffing a small bundle into your daughter's worn satchel. You hide a sharpened knife beneath your skirts, a silent promise of protection. You choose the thickest cloak you own, the one that smells faintly of lavender and smoke. The villagers whisper about the caravan, some with envy, others with suspicion. Leaving the safety of the village is no small risk. Stories of highwaymen and wild beasts have long been told around fires, keeping many rooted to their homes. But the promise of a fresh start beats louder than fear in your heart. As you join the small crowd, you notice the women travelers, some with babies strapped to their backs, others with faces hardened by years of toil. You recognize the same mix of hope and worry reflected in their eyes. The caravan leader, a broad-shouldered man with a weather-beaten face, counts heads and barks orders. His voice is sharp but fair. You overhear that their destination is a distant abbey rumored to offer sanctuary to women seeking refuge or a new life. A place where they can learn to read, to write, to live beyond the limits imposed by birth and circumstance. Historians still argue whether medieval convents truly offered such opportunities or were more prisons than sanctuaries for women. But right now, the idea alone is enough to marketplace, bartering for fresh vegetables and a small loaf of bread. The coin feels heavy in your hand, but it tastes like freedom. You overhear a merchant boasting about exotic fabrics from the East, a healer whispering about a strange new illness spreading through the city, and a scholar debating loudly about whether women should be allowed to own property. Historians still argue whether such debates ever had any real effect beyond elite circles, or trickled down to change lives in places like yours. In the town square, a group of women gathers around a man reading aloud from a large book. His voice carries across the crowd, weaving stories of saints and sinners, battles and betrayals. You catch phrases about female virtue and proper conduct, and the words sting like a cold slap. Yet, you notice some women nodding, others shaking their heads. Proof that even here, conformity is contested. Later, you visit a small chapel tucked away behind a row of shops. The stone is worn and cold beneath your fingers. But inside, candles flicker and cast dancing shadows on stained glass. A nun greets you quietly, offering sanctuary and a promise of learning. She speaks of the Abbey's school, where girls are taught to read, write, and heal. You think of the woman with silver hair from the caravan, the herbs, and the whispered power of knowledge. Could this be the place to start over? To reclaim what the world has tried to deny you? Outside, you spot a group of young girls playing a game that resembles tag. Their laughter rings out, unburdened and free, and you feel a pang for your own lost innocence. You know that even here, freedom will come with its own chains, but the idea of choice, real choice, makes your chest ache. At night, as the town quiets and the stars emerge, you write in a small notebook, borrowed from the Abbey. Your handwriting is shaky, but each letter feels like a step forward. You write about your journey, your hopes, and the fierce determination burning inside you. The world is vast, complicated, and often cruel, but it is also full of cracks where light leaks in, and you are determined to find them. Morning arrives with a chill that bites through your cloak, but you barely notice. The town has begun to feel less like a strange maze and more like a place where you might, just maybe, carve out a space for yourself. You spend your days between the Abbey's humble schoolroom and the bustling market streets, balancing hope with the ever-present weight of doubt. Inside the Abbey, the air smells of parchment, beeswax, and something faintly medicinal. The nuns move with quiet purpose, their chants threading through the stone corridors like a soft lullaby. You learn to hold a quill, to shape letters that seem almost magical. Every stroke feels like a small rebellion against the ignorance that once bound you. Yet freedom has its price. Not all here welcome your presence. Some whisper behind your back, questioning why a village woman dares to claim knowledge. Historians still argue whether medieval convents empowered women or simply replaced one form of control with another. The truth probably lies somewhere in the cold shadow of those stone walls. Outside, the market calls with its cacophony of sounds, the sharp cries of vendors hawking goods, the clatter of horses' hooves, the murmur of deals struck in hushed tones. You observe women weaving baskets, spinning wool, and selling brightly dyed cloth. Their hands are rough but skilled, and their eyes carry stories of survival and strength. A curious young merchant approaches you one afternoon, offering a glimpse of the wider world. He speaks of cities where women run businesses, where knowledge and money flow more freely than here. You laugh softly at the thought, recalling your mother's sighs over unpaid taxes and your own tangled debts. The night brings its own battles. Dreams of your village haunt you. Cold hearths, stern faces, and the crocodile dung sunscreen that still makes you cringe. But then your daughter's face appears in the dark, her smile bright and fearless. You cling to that image like a lifeline. One evening, you stumble upon a secret gathering in the Abbey's garden, a circle of women sharing stories and songs, laughter threading through the darkness like silver threads. They speak of old magic, lost rituals, and the power hidden in the earth beneath their feet. Their voices carry a fierce hope, a reminder that even in the harshest times, the human spirit resists. You realize then that survival is more than enduring hardship. It's about reclaiming joy, knowledge, and connection. The road ahead remains uncertain, but the cracks of light are growing wider, and you step forward, ready to meet whatever comes next. The seasons turn again, slow and relentless. The Abbey garden blooms with wildflowers, their colors vibrant against the gray stone walls. You've learned much. Reading and writing, the basics of healing, and the whispered histories that don't appear in dusty tomes. Your daughter runs through the sunlit courtyards, laughter ringing clear and free, a sound you once thought impossible to hear from her. But the world beyond the Abbey remains a complicated place. Letters arrive from distant relatives, some filled with hope, others with warnings. The village you left behind feels both distant and sharply present in your heart. You wonder how many women still trudge through the same hardships, their lives bound by customs as cold and rigid as the stone floors beneath your feet. There are nights when doubt creeps in like a shadow. What if this is all a dream, a fragile bubble waiting to burst? What if the walls close in again and the chains snap tight? But then you think of your daughter's bright eyes and steady hand, the small victories etched into every day. Historians still argue whether medieval women ever truly escaped the roles forced upon them, or simply found ways to live within new constraints? Maybe it's not about escaping, but about redefining strength. You understand now that life was brutal, not just because of poverty or danger, but because the rules tried to erase your very existence, your hopes, your voice. But you are here. You have endured. You have resisted. You have rewritten the story, one quiet step at a time. And as you sit by the window, the fading light casting long shadows over your worn hands, you whisper a promise to the future that no matter how dark the night, no matter how fierce the storm, you will keep walking, keep dreaming, keep fighting, because in the end, that is what makes a life worth living. Now, the day slips gently into night, and the world softens around you. The sharp edges of hardship fade into the quiet hum of memories, like the distant rustle of leaves or the faint flicker of candlelight. You rest your head, breathing slowly, feeling the weight of time lift just a little. Imagine yourself wrapped in the warmth of a thick woolen blanket, the scent of fresh earth and wildflowers drifting through an open window. The voices of the past grow softer, replaced by the steady rhythm of your own heartbeat, a steady drum of resilience and hope. Tonight, you are not alone. You carry within you the strength of countless women who faced the storm and stood tall, who whispered secrets in the dark and dared to dream of dawn. So let your mind wander, free and unburdened. Let the gentle hum of the night carry you toward rest. Tomorrow is another day, another step on the long road. Sleep well, dream deep, and know that you are part of a story that is still unfolding. End of script. Sweet dreams.